Welcome to Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and willing to share their wisdom with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with a Latina perspective. This is season 2, focused on health and wellness. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Hello, welcome back. Today's conversation is so good. I mean, in my opinion, they're all good, but I'm so glad that Jess was able to chat with me for this season. She is a certified health and wellness coach based out of LA. We met at a conference in 2019 and have kept in touch via social media since. She's a huge advocate for sharing her knowledge and wanting to educate others about holistic living, especially as a Latina. She's such a joy to chat with, so I hope you enjoy our conversation. Hi!
Hi!
I am so... Oh my goodness, I am so excited to be talking with you. I am excited to introduce you to the podcast and the listeners. I met Jess 2 years ago at a conference out in California. We met at the We All Grow conference in 2019, which seems like 10 years ago already. But it was only 2 years ago. But we've stayed in touch because of Instagram, and I just love everything that she's putting out there on social media into the world. And I just knew that I had to connect with her and have her speak on the podcast. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Karina. I so look forward to having this conversation with you. So thank you for having me on here, and thank you for doing what you do, amplifying our voices, which we so need. We've always needed it, but today more than ever. So thank you for doing what you do and putting all this great content out there. My name is Jess Guzman, and I'm a certified health and wellness coach, and I specialize in emotional eating and mental health. So I know it's a mouthful, but I love what I do, and the big reason why I wanted to make sure that I specialize in mental health is because that's what led me on my health and wellness journey. And I know that word gets thrown out there a lot, the journey, the process, but it really is such a journey. I mean, I've been studying health and wellness, or intentionally studying health and wellness for over a decade now. I was in the nursing field for a few years, and I got pregnant with my 10-year-old daughter, and I, did not feel well. And I thought, okay, I mean, these are hormones, right? My body is creating a child. Of course, I'm not going to feel as energetic or as lively right off the bat. But then I'm thinking that it was because of the stress that I felt at the time, the pressure of being in the medical field. And I was a lead nurse at a clinical research company. And there was just so many changes happening on top of my body creating life. And unfortunately, I started experiencing anxiety attacks. And then slowly but surely, they became panic attacks. And, now looking back, I know that I was experiencing anxiety attacks since I was a little girl. And I remember, at 19 years old, I made a doctor's appointment because my chest kept hurting. And I'm thinking, what's going on? Like, am I going to have a heart attack? I had no idea what anxiety was, had no idea about mental health or what that even meant, right? It's a kind of a taboo topic too in our culture. I'm Mexican. I was born in San Luis Potosí, and that's a topic we don't talk about, right? So I go into the doctor's office at 19, and I'm telling him, I feel like this, I feel like that, my chest hurts, I can't breathe. Is there something wrong with my heart? And you would think that, based off of the test that he ran, and he did something called an EKG. He says, no, you're fine. You're a healthy 19-year-old, but he never once talks about anxiety, right? So knowing what I know now, I thought, whew, I was experiencing an anxiety attack, right? It's no wonder that I felt that I couldn't breathe. And it's also no wonder that I was worried about, there was something wrong with my heart. I right away thought that, it was the end of the world, but that's anxiety for you. But fast forward to experiencing my first panic attack when I was pregnant with my daughter. um, it feels horrible. It feels like an anxiety attack times 10. And right there, I was thinking that I was having a heart attack. And thankfully, I was working in a clinical setting. So right away, the doctors did another EKG, tested my blood pressure, and they confirmed, what, this is a panic attack. Coincidentally, although I always say there's no coincidences, but I was working in a mental health setting. So the research that we were doing was specifically on patients with underlying mental health issues. So bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, um, Alzheimer's disease as well. So I was shocked. I was like, wait, I should have known all of this. Like, I should have known what was happening. This is where I work. But of course, you think it could never happen to you, right? So here I am, 4 months pregnant with my baby girl, and, had great insurance at the time. And I took my butt to see my OB. And, after running some more tests and, a couple visits, I was really disappointed. I'm trying to think back to that moment. I was disappointed. I was sad. I was scared that her only answer was prescribing an anti-anxiety medication. Now, I think there's a time and place for everything, right? Including medication and Western medicine. But considering that I was pregnant, something about taking a medication for anxiety just didn't sit right with me. And I was honest with her. I said, you know what? I don't feel comfortable taking this. I mean, what are the side effects? What's my baby girl going to feel? What am I going to feel? And she says, well, don't worry about it. It's a very, very mild dose. It's like zero point 0.5 milligrams of a medication called Clonopin. And I thought, yeah, I've read about that medication before, and even though it's a very mild dose, I don't know if, once again, I feel comfortable taking it. So, she wrote the prescription, and yeah, I didn't feel comfortable taking it, but I also wanted to feel better. I knew I wasn't going to feel like, my quote unquote normal healthy self, because once again, I was creating life, but um, I at least didn't want to feel what I felt that day that I experienced my first panic attack. So that's when I started doing my own research. And this is where I also became very passionate about being our own best health advocate, right? We can do the research, we can, read, we can ask questions, we can inform ourselves as much as possible, and go to those who, have studied about medicine, about health and wellness. But I am a big advocate for being your own best health advocate. I mean, even with my coaching clients, I say, I'm going to throw all this information at you, or, I'm going to share certain, tips, and I'm going to give you suggestions. But if something doesn't sit right with you, take it with a grain of salt and do your own research. Or I might be saying a lot of things, but something stands out to you like, I remember Jess said this. or, oh, that was interesting that she brought this up. Go with it. That's how we begin to trust in our own intuition, right? So, um, yeah, I mean, back then, this was, um, yeah, well, now 11 years ago. So, YouTube, Facebook was, kind of popular back then. We were just coming out of the MySpace era. But there wasn't a lot of information out there on, Facebook, YouTube. But Google was my best friend, so I would Google everything. And that's where I became informed about the effects that food has on our mood, on our emotional health and well-being, how food has such a big impact on our brain health. So I started, implementing little things here and there. The first thing I did was actually bought a juicer, and my fiance would help me make green juices before I left to work. And I still laugh at myself because I remember I would have my green juice, but I would still go to McDonald's, or like I would still, eat fast food because that's what I knew. But I started somewhere, right? I had to start somewhere. And then I learned about meditation and prenatal yoga. And, I will always hold such a dear spot in my heart for yoga and meditation because it's what helped me learn about going inward and tuning into my breath and all of that good stuff. So, that's why I'm super passionate about what I do. And I, love teaching my platform on Instagram and my clients about all of the different factors that go into us feeling truly well. So, yes, food has a big, big impact on us, but so do our relationships. What we see, what we're consuming, not only via food, but through the content, that we absorb, through even the books that we read. So being very mindful of all of these things in your life that then translates into holistic health. So, holistic health isn't just about natural foods and essential oils and eating organic. Holistic health is treating yourself as a whole being, your whole experience, right? Not just the good times, but also the quote unquote bad times too. So I know I that was a super long answer, but as you can see, I get really excited to kind of go back and reminisce and allow myself to then acknowledge where I'm currently at. But yeah, I'm gonna leave a little bit of time for you and ask away.
No, that's great. I am just like captivated hearing your story, especially because I feel like as millennials, um, like we are really doing the work to bridge that gap between our parents' generation and our kids' generation. And I've really been thinking a lot about the differences because I feel like our parents' generation and our generation, like those are so vastly different, like a lot because of the internet, really.
Yeah.
The the internet and just how society was when they were growing up and how society is now. And I feel like I too have had a really hard time talking to my parents about my own mental health and well being because whenever I brought it up, it was like, oh, well, just try harder to feel better. Or you'll get over it in a few days. Like, I know sometimes you get stressed out, but you'll be fine. You'll be fine. And I have to think like my parents wouldn't purposely give me bad advice, but this is not good advice. But then I think about like why is it? Why like their perception of the world and society and how they had to survive what is so vastly different with how we are living in society and perceiving the issues and the struggles we deal with. And so I like every time I hear of someone like putting in the work to change their lives for better and like taking mental health seriously, talking about it, looking into it, and even the fact that you said no, this doesn't feel right, because I feel like as um, Latinas, we're taught, and especially like women, we're taught to respect authority, and if someone tells you to do something, you just say okay, and you're going to do it, especially if you have the privilege of going to the doctor and they say take this medication. We're not supposed to question it. But at the same time, like you said, we need to be open, or like be told that it's okay to trust your intuition. And I feel
Yes.
like our generation is the one that's like shifting that narrative and saying like, no, what does my body tell me? Like, how am I feeling about this? And it's okay to say no, and it's okay to shift, and it's okay to research.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we now have the privilege and the ability to do so. Now, I understand there is a lot of information out there, so it could be a little scary, confusing. Well, what if I make the wrong move or the wrong call? And I understand that practicing trusting in our intuition is just that, a practice, right? A practice that kind of like meditation, which I don't know if we'll go into that, but it's a skill, right? So trusting in your intuition, it really is a skill. And I'm saying it's a skill because nowadays there is so much what I call noise, right? We have social media, we have Netflix, we have, I mean, just so many different things, emails, text messages. I mean, we have literally a computer on on the palm of our hands 24/7 feels like, right? So to begin honoring our intuition, that little nudge, at this point, I believe that it is a skill, right? So, I mean, right now I'm taking a social media break for that reason, that I felt like, ooh, I am giving a lot of energy into these platforms. And I love it because I think now more than ever, these conversations need to happen. They really do, especially for our community. These conversations about breaking generational narratives and traumas and, health and healing, which I use the word healing very lightly, because, most of us think that, let's just say that we start seeing a therapist, or you practice different healing modalities. You think now all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, I'm just this completely new person, where it, unfortunately, disclaimer, it doesn't happen that way, right? Because we are in a healing process until the day we are no longer breathing. That's what I believe, because each season is going to look and feel very differently. So maybe, let's just say that, well, true story. I used to get a lot of anxiety driving, right? Driving further than a few miles from my home. And this was not too long ago. This was like 3 years ago. I would still get a lot of anxiety driving, a few miles out. I still don't know exactly why, but my intuition told me to make sure that before I got in the car, I made sure that I obviously knew the route that I needed to take. Maybe I would grab my essential oils to help me relax and breathe. I wouldn't play really loud music that heightened my senses. So I would do a few things, and that was just me. Like, how can I feel the most relaxed, like the most like in tune, the most in flow? yeah, I'm gonna put these things in place. So tuning in is a skill that we need to learn because there are so many distractions, there is so much noise. So I believe that we have to take breaks from all of these distractions so that we can um, start practicing to tune in and not be afraid, and begin to really trust in that intuitive nature that I call it that godly connection, right? So I call my higher self, that which I cannot understand, God. And I always tell my children that that's how God communicates with us, right? It's that little nudge that, maybe I should take a left right here. Or, maybe I should call this person, which true story, just a few weeks ago, I had this calling to send a message to, um, I would call a friend. I mean, I met her at one of these networking events and we've stayed in touch. And I hadn't talked to her in a while. And I thought, I'm going to reach out to her. So I'd send her a quick message. And she says, girl, that was your soul. That was your soul guiding you, because my dog just passed away 20 minutes ago and she was a mess. So she was a mess. And she goes, I thank you so much for reaching out. So that's what I'm talking about. It's those little nudges, but we always dismiss them, right? We always dismiss them because we are so busy. We're so busy. And even if we're not physically busy, our mind is just running, 1,000 miles per hour. So learning how to um, be still, or mindfulness. A lot of us are talking about mindfulness, right? Being in the present moment and allowing yourself to take little breaks from technology, right? I love technology. I mean, this is why I'm here with you now, but taking little breaks so that you can begin to um, feel more confident, trusting in those nudges and changing the conversation. Because even though someone has, they have a certain title, like for example, my doctor, she went to school for years, right? So of course I respect her. I respect the medical field, but I also respect myself. And it took a long time for me to get here.
I feel like I am just now realizing that health and wellness is like a whole, like, pertains to your whole life. Um
Yes.
I was so used to putting everything in a box. My education, my work, my family, my mental health. And I'd be like, okay, well, I can focus on working out only this time. But I'm going to eat whatever I want because I worked out. So I can have all the sweets, I could have all the fast food.
Yeah.
Um, and everything was so separate. And so it's only really been in the past few years, maybe it's like been 2020 that has really helped me stop and think about my whole life, because I mean, we everyone had to stop. And so what else do we have except space to be at home and think about what we're doing? We weren't rushing around driving as much. So yeah, it's only been maybe the past year and a half that I've been more mindful of how health and wellness plays into all of my boxes, really, and how I can
Yeah.
like bring it together into a circle, like a holistic
Yeah.
lifestyle. um so, and I know that you teach on this, you talk about this, but do you want to talk a little bit more about how we can start thinking about this, all of these areas? Because I mean, I'm still learning, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I often say that the I believe, um, especially for my program, that the foundation of health and wellness is our mental health and emotional well-being. Why? Because when we feel better, we make more conscious choices about everything in our lives, right? Unfortunately, when we don't feel well, it's when we're supposed to be doing the things so that, the benefits can kind of like trickle over into all the areas in our lives. But unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. So the better we feel, the more conscious choices we're going to make, and the more control and power we have over our lives, right? So now, I mean, life is unpredictable, and that's, what makes life fun and interesting and crazy and wild. But at the same time, the if when we feel sick, or and we're kind of spacey, we just don't feel emotionally and mentally well, that's when we make very when we react, we're constantly reacting to life versus responding. I mean, I know that's what I've noticed in my life, those moments where I don't give myself a break. I, don't, even with working out. I mean, you talked about, well, when I work out, I, give myself permission to eat the sweets and eat this and that, right? But so that can be what I call motivating factor to get your body moving, right? But at the same time, when we work out too much, we have to think we're exerting so much energy. And there's going to be moments where your body's going to say, enough. Like, you're pushing me to physically work, mentally work. You are, you're feeding me all this stuff, right? That I can only process so quickly. There's going to be a point where your body's going to be like, no, I'm not going to respond to that workout. I'm not going to, like physically respond well to that workout. And then you become very physically and mentally stressed. And so you're there with the best of intentions working out. But if you don't give your body the rest that it needs, the fuel that it needs, the breaks, all of that good stuff, eventually your body's going to perceive all of that as a stressor, right? So and that is going to affect your work life balance, the way that we parent, our relationships, all of that. So in my program, that's why I don't just focus on nutrition, what you're eating or what you're drinking or how you're moving. I focus on, you as a whole. What's going on in your work life balance, which I use that word lightly, balance, right? Because I think we create our own balance. Like on a day-to-day basis. On a day-to-day basis, we have to create our own balance. So sometimes for me, balance is just as simple as I'm going outside and I'm pointing because my office is, right in front of my home. But balance could be I'm going outside for 10-15 minutes because I've been sitting for way too long and I haven't, gotten any fresh air or sun. So that's balance. Or I, grab my essential oil and I, take a few deep breaths. And then on other days, it's I'm waking up early and I'm drinking my water and I'm doing yoga, and I'm visiting with a friend or something. So it just all depends. But, we have to be okay with knowing that we do have the power to create the life that we want. But that can't happen if we're not feeling well. So like a lot of us are talking about setting intentions and manifestation. But part of manifesting is first and foremost making sure that we're coming from a place of gratitude and grace and feeling well, and um, not being so resistant to what might be already right there for us. Right. So Holistic health, it's about making sure that you take all aspects of your life into consideration. And this is not about perfection, because I know that we are all trying our best, especially after 2020. I mean, we're all grieving so much. It's some heavy energy as of lately, right? So we're all trying our best, but making sure, that we approach holistic health and wellness with a lot of grace and patience, because it is, I mean, it does sound like a lot of work. And sometimes it is, I'm not going to lie. But the more you create your own balance, the more you get out of your comfort zone when it comes to some of these practices, the more it can feel natural, right? Instead of like, oh, well, it's supposed to look like this, or I'm supposed to be doing this. But yeah, I mean, once again, really long answer to your question, but that's how I perceive holistic health.
I love that. I love your honesty and the fact that you said that it's hard work or that it could be hard, because I think a lot of us have um or are scared to like go down the route of like trying out meditation or trying out like eating differently, because what would, well, if we eat differently, what would our parents think, or like what our friends think? But also with meditation, it's like, what am I going to be thinking about? And like, I don't want to show emotion, because as
Mhm.
Latinas, and I'm firstborn, so I always had to like be
Yeah.
tough. You don't show emotion, like, or it's not like a thing that's accepted or praised. It's more like shut down, like, oh, no
Yeah.
llores, estás bien, like suck it up. So um yeah, I like that you said that it is hard work, but
Yeah.
it's essential uh to every area of your life, like you said, holistic living.
Absolutely.
um
Absolutely. So essential. Yeah.
yeah, for someone who might not understand meditation or think that you have to sit for like an hour at a time, or has never even tried meditation, where, like, how would you explain it, or like how would you have someone even start exploring that area?
Yeah. I would highly suggest and recommend YouTube, our friend YouTube, guided meditations. Now, if you've never done it before, um, start with, there's meditations out there that are anywhere from a minute all the way up until 5 minutes. So I would say you can start somewhere like that, with the guided meditation. It's literally what it sounds like, as someone is guiding you through tuning into your breath and guiding the whole thing, right? So you don't have to sit by yourself and be afraid, oh, well, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And just a disclaimer here, even in that moment that you are, well, am I doing it like this? Am I doing it like that? Meditation is about um, observing your thoughts and releasing them, right? Tuning into your breath, allowing yourself to be in this present moment. So even in questioning that, you're already experiencing a meditative state, right? And the goal here is for you not to completely tune everything out, right? That's not the goal. I mean, our brains are there for a reason, right? And it's such a it our brain, I mean, it's so, we even have it's called a blood brain barrier. So there's actually a barrier between our brain and our body, right? So, and when we're sleeping at night, it actually has its own detox process. So, I mean, I can go into this for so long, but to go back into meditation. Meditation is not about tuning everything out. No, I mean, I've talked to people who have been meditating for 20, 30 years, and they can meditate anywhere. Um, One of my clients, tells me, you can put me in the middle of LA in a busy street, and I will be able to tune that out because she's been practicing meditation for so many years, right? So, meditation is about, I believe, this is how I understand it, being in this present moment, right? Tuning into our breath, knowing that we can control our breath. And what better time than to be super grateful about that, right? That we can breathe. We can intentionally breathe, and it feels so good and it's free, right? So meditation is about tuning into your body, your breathing, noticing your thoughts, receiving them, but not hanging on to them. Let them go. Allowing yourself not to be too much in the past or too much in the future. You're right here, right now. You can practice meditation while you're washing the dishes. You're right there. You're right there. You're not thinking about, did I remember to do this? Did I help so and so, with this? Or, did my child do, her homework? No, you're right there washing the dishes. And maybe to practice it, you're counting how many times you wipe down that plate, right? And you're tuning into your breath. You can take, there's meditative showers where you're noticing how the water feels on your body. You are once again connecting to your breath. You're enjoying that specific moment. So it's yet another skill, another practice, but you can start by tuning into some free YouTube videos, or there's so much content out there for free now, that I would suggest starting there. But yeah, meditation, you can do it anywhere, and you can practice mindfulness while you're at it, because mindfulness is also being in this present moment. And then if there is a thought that keeps coming up and you're like back in your groove, right? And you're like back in this present moment, but this thought keeps coming up, I pay attention to that too. And let's just say that I'm in stillness, like I'm literally sitting down with my eyes closed, and that's how I'm meditating on a particular day. But thought keeps bugging me. You know what? Let me pull out my phone in the notes section real quick and let me jot this down, or let me write it down, right? To do a little bit of a, okay, I see you, I hear you. Now let me get back into my practice. So I hope that was, I try to simplify it as much as possible. But maybe just start with tuning into your breath. So I like doing what's called the 5-5-7 breath that my clients are super familiar with. And all it is you're breathing in through your nose for a count of 5, and then you're holding at the top for a count of 5, and then you're slowly exhaling through your nose for a count of 7. So that's also putting you in more of a meditative state, right? And I always suggest tuning into the quality of your breath. So when you breathe in, allowing your belly to expand. Most of us, we're chest breathers, or we're mouth breathers, and we're always breathing like this, or we're holding our breath for a really long time. Let it go. Breathe in through your nose. Stop sucking it in. Hold it at the top, and then slowly releasing while tightening your core. You do that a few times, and I promise you, your heart rate will change. You will definitely feel the difference. Yeah.
That is so helpful and not intimidating at all. I Yeah, I mean, I feel like I can, especially now that it's 2021 and we're getting back into our busy routine, like things are opening back up. I'm having to work a lot more. I feel like it's so important to not go back to the busyness of 2018 when there was no space, really, if I think about it and if I'm honest. Like, there was no space for me to think, really. Um, because there's so much noise around us. And so I think that's really good advice for someone who might be intimidated or is just starting out. Like, it doesn't have to be an like take up the whole day of filling it with meditation, or like just, and like, I love how you said that it can be like, as like you're washing dishes, like as you're going throughout life, like just take a moment to quiet your mind, quiet your breathing.
Yeah, or humming, right? So that could be a meditative state. Like maybe hum your favorite song, right? Hum your favorite song while, I don't know, you're picking up kids from school, while you're washing the dishes, while you're, I don't know, writing something down. Meditation doesn't have to be just sitting down with our eyes closed in a lotus position. A lotus is, the flower you see out there that is representative of, so many things in the wellness world. But you don't have to just sit there and sit still. I get that that could be a little challenging and scary because you're like, oh, I don't know if all this stuff is going to come up, and I'm not ready to peel back that onion, right? Like I'm not ready for any of that. It's okay. But that also tells me that you need to do it even more, right? Like if all of that is coming up for you, like, ooh, I don't know, you can do it even more. But I wouldn't, just like I wouldn't expect you to do a heavy deadlift when you haven't even gotten up out of your chair and I don't know how long, and haven't even taken the time to go for a 5-10 minute walk. I wouldn't expect for you to sit down for 20 to 30 minutes and sit in stillness and meditate and tune everything out. I wouldn't expect you to do that. And if anyone is telling you to do that, listen to what's going on in here, right? Maybe start with a minute or two or three and go from there. I'm first generation too. So feeling the feels, no, we don't do that. Like we hold it together. We're strong. Can I cuss on here? We get shit done. We go from one thing to another. We're powerhouses, right? Somos bien chingonas. And with that being said, a lot of the times because of this narrative, we store everything, we hold everything back, and now all of a sudden we are experiencing eczema, right? We're experiencing hives, we're breaking out, our shoulder hurts, we're like, what the, like, where'd that come from, or our back hurts, we're like, what? That's your body. I mean, there's a whole book out there called Your Body Keeps, I'm totally butchering it, but Your Body Keeps Score. Your body does keep score, right? We can only suppress things for so long. Eventually, it's going to show up on our body, or the whole saying, like, oh, you cried over spilt milk. Yeah, because you're storing so much stuff. And so I get, why sitting in stillness feels scary, but you can practice being in a meditative state at any moment, really. I mean, while you're driving, make sure that you're looking around you. Obviously, you are, but most of us are on like autopilot. That sometimes we don't even know how we got to a certain destination, right? So tuning into your breath and, oh yeah, I'm gonna turn on this street today. Oh, check out that tree. Like you're literally, being in that mindfulness state, right? To get yourself ready to practice being in a more meditative state when you are ready to sit still. And yeah.
Yes, exactly. I really love the fact that, like, you're coming at this front with the Latina perspective. I think you're the first holistic health and wellness coach that is Latina that I've ever met. And
Really? Oh, that's powerful. Thank you for
y-
sharing that.
Yeah, I feel like, well, through your network, I like been in touch with other, or I've seen other Latinas in this space, but it was so powerful to meet you and to to see everything that you're putting out there with this Latina culture background. I felt like it was attainable, or like I could connect with you on that level, and in this space, because I've only, before meeting you, I've only seen like health and wellness coaches that were white, really.
Yeah.
And I there was a disconnect. And even in with therapy, the therapist that I had was not Latina, and there was always like that barrier or that disconnect. Like, you don't actually know how I'm feeling. Like, I can tell you, but you don't get it 100% because you don't understand the cultural background that I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so powerful to see you in this space. And I know that you touched on it a little bit, why this is important in the Latinx community. But I want to ask, like, this conversation and the things that we're talking about are so important for other Latinas to hear, um, because there's not a lot of representation out there. So why don't you talk about like what got you into this space in the first place? Like, I know you talked about like your background and that you were kind of just listening to your intuition. Um, but it's also hard if you don't see the representation yourself to step into a space.
Yeah. Oh, everything you're saying gave me the chills because, I decided to take a break from social media because I do feel like I'm in a what I call transition, like something is shifting and changing. So I'm trying to really pay attention to that and go inward. But while at the same time, something inside of me is also like, okay, you're gonna take a break, but this doesn't stop because we need it now more than ever. And hearing you say that, I'm like, oh, it gives you the chills because it's so true. I mean, same thing, when I was doing my research, when I was talking to people, when I first started doing events, people didn't look like me. Women didn't look like me. I didn't look like them, and it did feel a little unsettling. And, all of these, limiting beliefs started popping up for me. Like, well, is this for me? Like how am I gonna go from eating, certain foods that I grew up eating to now eating this stuff called quinoa, which by the way comes from Peru, you know, which by the way. Um, and also side note, I mean, 30, 40 years ago, I live in California. I know for a fact there was no such thing as cilantro, avocados. Like there was like no, I mean people weren't eating that, right? So all of these foods are so much a part of our roots, our culture. I mean, nopales, nopales, quinoa, black beans, lentils, cilantro, hierbabuena, rosemary, I mean, yeah, there's so much a part of our roots and who we are. So I think what we're eating nowadays, like that's why we're becoming, so ill and sick because our body's like, what the heck is this? I can only take this for so long. So going back, I mean, yeah, it was like all of these limiting beliefs started popping up. But then once again, that's where I also started questioning, well, is this really true? Like, is it true? Is this thought, which I'm not going to own this. I forgot where I heard it, but is this thought 100% true? If the answer is no, who would I be without this thought? That's not my phrase. So don't quote me, but I picked that up somewhere and I consistently ask myself that. Who would I be without this thought? Well, when it comes to this space, I'm like, well, you know what? Who would I be? Exactly me. Like, there's a reason why I went through the things that I went through, and there's a reason why there's this calling or there's this what I call like fire within me to share more of this content, right? Because you're absolutely right. There's not a lot of people who look like us, and especially talking about holistic health. And I actually did it just something in me, said, okay, make this post. And the reason why I made this post is because a family member of mine who's been back and forth about going to therapy, not going to therapy, and he know, like, he's open to getting the help, like he knows that that he needs it, but then he shied away from it and said, well, that stuff is for white people. Like, that stuff is for white people, and who's gonna relate to my story, and yada yada yada. And then to top it off, like, it was like kind of like a little if he stuck a knife in my heart, it's like if he went, like if he twisted it, because then he said, you're too white, like you're too white. I'm like, what? I mean, no, like our people need this more than ever, especially going through everything we've been through. And I did a post, and so many people, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hip Latina, but they reposted it, right? And so many people were like, yes, I feel like that. Like, and then a lot of people started sharing how a lot of these practices are rooted in our culture, right? In our communities. So to me, I think, going back or circling back to what you said, at this point, yes, I'm taking a little break, but I want to push my message out there even more, because I also know that the reason why we have, this, we battle with this relationship with food, it's also because that's where we find comfort. Comfort, but also that's how our people show each other love, right? It's like we I remember my grandparents not having enough, right? Not having enough. And even if they had a little bit, they would tell, whoever would come over, oh, ¿quieres esto? ¿Quieres, oh, ya comieron? And, not, and the other people, maybe not even knowing that it was probably like their last plate of whatever, right? But they were willing to share and to give. So coming from that background, and now having the abundance of all kinds of different foods, right? We are used now. We're excited. We're like, well, I can have a little bit of this, a little el pan, que esto y el otro, and the abundance of that is showing up in our communities as diabetes, right? Heart disease, stroke, cancer. So I'm all for enjoying certain foods. I'm all for enjoying those comfort foods that, I mean, just the other day, I made carnitas with salsa. Like, I'm all for that, girl. While at the same time, I know that we can't always rely on food that is not rooted within us, that is pretty toxic. And I mean, it's showing up, right? It's showing up in, like I said, different areas of our lives, and also in disease. So I talk about all this stuff because I know that it's definitely needed. And yeah, there needs to be more people to openly have these conversations and say, you know what? Yeah, this was our past, but as we've seen in 2020 and from here on out, there's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen, and teaching and relearning a lot of different things, especially when it comes to health and wellness. I mean, I remember living in San Luis. My grandma would go to a mercadito and get all of her veggies, and she would make que jugo de nopal with orange juice, you know? So, like, to me, like, that's just, I saw that growing up. Like, I saw my grandmother make her own medicines from hierbas. Like, I saw that. So to think that now all of this is, you know, kind of trendy, and that it, you know, that we don't belong in this, what would you call it? Like, that we don't, that we don't resonate with this message, or, you know, that we have to be of a certain color to be practicing these things. I mean, to me, it's sad, because if you if you can, I mean, look back to how you actually grew up. I mean, a lot of my clients are like, oh yeah, I grew up in Mexico too, and yo comía caldo and, you know, verduras and this and that. And it wasn't until I came here that things changed and shifted. So yeah, I think for me a big thing that has encouraged me to keep doing what I'm doing is, who would you be without this thought that you don't belong here, you know, this thought that um the things that you're doing are too white, you know? And once again, you know, when my family member said that, I was like, no, I just want to feel good, you know? I want to be able to do these things from a space of like, ah, I feel light, I feel energetic. But yeah, I mean, I know once again that, you know, was kind of a lot to unpack, but um, yeah, thank you for sharing that with me, because it was super encouraging to, yeah, keep, you know, pushing this message, and make it, maybe even inspire other women, you know, who look like us, that are intrigued by anything that I'm saying. Like, hey, let's do it. You know, let's make this our norm.
Yes, 100%. I feel like if we truly take time to look back, we realize that this health and wellness, like the what we call health and wellness now,
Mm.
is in us. Like it's
Yeah,
part of our culture,
yeah,
our ancestry.
yes.
Um, ah, this whole conversation gets me so excited. I am so thankful for everything that you talked about and shared. And I do really think that it's going to be inspiring for other people to hear. Um,
Thank you. Well, thank you for you know, sharing this space with me and giving, you know, me this time to talk about all this.
yeah, for sure. Before we leave, I wanted to ask, like, what is one piece of advice or encouragement or like one step that someone can take, especially the next generation, when they're thinking about holistic living?
Ooh, I think going back to what I said earlier, you know, the better we feel, the more conscious decisions we're going to make about our life, right? And, you know, when we are sick and we're not feeling well, it's almost like we're giving someone else the power over our lives. You know, because we're having to depend on other people to tell us exactly how to go about taking care of ourselves. And, you know, there's a time and place for everything. You know, I am grateful for Western medicine. I mean, I was in the medical field for so long, you know, and it paved the way for me on so many levels. And I know that if anything, like, you know, I believe in health insurance and making sure that you get your annual checkups. But once again, ask questions, be your own advocate. Um, but taking a step towards living this holistic way, you are now being more, probably going to feel more present and mindful of the decisions that you're making in each moment, right? Because when you are too much in your head and you're feeling kind of spacey and your thoughts are racing, you might be missing a big sign that you're either praying for or asking for, right? Because you're so much in your head and you're going from one task to another or doing a bunch of different things, and you might be missing exactly what you're praying for. It might be right there in front of you. So yeah, and it's okay to feel uncomfortable in the beginning with anything that we do. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. I think we shy away from doing certain things because it doesn't feel good. It feels too uncomfortable. Well, yeah, it's new or it's something that you haven't practiced in a while. So of course it's going to feel uncomfortable. But ask yourself, is what I'm doing in alignment with the life that I say that I want for myself? If the answer is no, all right, well then, maybe you just kind of want to take all this with a grain of salt and pivot, move the other way. But let's just say that it's exercise, right? Like, yeah, this feels uncomfortable, but I feel really good afterwards. Or, I notice that when I exercise, I am in a better mood. Or with food, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of cooking that much anymore. I think, I kind of burned myself out a little bit. But let's just say that you're trying a new recipe and you end up really liking it, right? You really like this new recipe. And then you try it again the next, or you're planning on trying it again the next week, but now you're like, oh, this, I don't feel comfortable, or you kind of get a little lazy. But I want you to think of the aftermath of those things that you are doing that are in alignment with the life that you say that you want. So that's where I'm going to leave that.
Yeah, it's so good. Oh my goodness. Everything you said is so good. And now I'm thinking back, like, how can I start implementing these things in my own life? So
Well,
thank
where do you
you.
want to start?
Where do I want to start?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I remember I messaged you, I think maybe a year ago.
Okay.
And one thing that I did implement is that I have a full cup of water, if not two, before I have my coffee. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Start with water. Most of us are super dehydrated.
Yes. And so I have increased my water intake since
Yay!
we spoke.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Um,
I love
yeah, but
it.
I think the next step for me personally is going to be um, doing the mindfulness and like setting actual time in the day. Like it could be during my transition periods. Like if I'm working for an hour, then I'm going to take a 5 minute meditation break of just like quieting my mind before I move on to something else. And so that's
Yes.
what I've gotten out of our conversation for me personally. I think that's where I'm going
Yes,
to
I love
start.
it. Okay, you
Yeah.
have to catch me up on that. Meditation, for me, what I call my non-negotiables are definitely water in the morning. We actually get super dehydrated at night. Our body does so much. Water in the morning, meditation, prayer, and a little bit of movement. Those are non-negotiables for me for sure. So whenever one of those things is not like it's a little off throughout my day or the week, I can feel it. Like I'm less patient. I'm not as energetic. I want people just to leave me alone, or I miss certain things here and there. But yeah, for me, those are non-negotiables, and they've been game changers for sure. So I really hope that you create the time. Notice how I said create the time.
Yes. Yeah, because you got to be intentional about it.
Yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me. I've had a lot of fun talking to you, and
Yeah.
yeah, I hope it gets to the ears and the eyes of everyone who needs the message the most.
For sure. Why don't you share where people can find you? I know that you're taking like a social media break, but I feel like everything that's
Yeah.
you posted on there is like so good. It's so good.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a ton of content on there. So you can find me at Coach Jess G Guzman. And then you also have my contact info on my Instagram page. There's my email on there, even my phone number, an application for my program, which I won't be taking new clients until I'm thinking until July. But that can change. But for now, my thought is I won't take new clients till July. But there's a ton of info on my page, so have at it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm going to put that all in the show notes for people to find you anyway.
Thank
Um,
you.
but thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your encouragement, your advice, your wisdom, and everything, like sharing your story. I am so glad that we got to speak.
Yeah, me too. Take care, everyone.
Isn't she just an awesome person? I'm thankful that she shared her story because I'm sure many others, including myself, can relate to wanting to be better advocates for ourselves when it comes to our mental health. I love her calming presence and how she encourages us to take our health journey one step at a time and with a lot of grace. I encourage you to follow her on Instagram so you too can be encouraged by her content. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share, rate on Apple Podcasts, take a screenshot to post on Instagram, or send me a DM. You can also comment on this YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So, enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye!